Okay, stand by for room tone.
Mick was an interesting person. As destitute as he was, he had a screw loose. I mean, this guy wouldn't have a dime to his name. We put him on an allowance. We had to give him just a certain amount of money a month to live on, and all he did was buy cigarettes, or he'd go out and buy a parakeet or something. I mean, you know, the guy's gonna try to support a parakeet. I mean, there's better ways of spending your money, Bob. There's better ways of spending your money, Mick. We'd always just say, hey, look, you need a new pair of socks. Forget the bird. Yeah, but hey, that's just the nature of rock and roll. You know, you can't explain the things you do sometimes.
But is that also the force, like the fact that he bought a parakeet instead of socks, that probably makes him such a great guitar player?
Sure, that's what makes most musicians great, is that intangible screw loose. It's like the weirdness of who you are that just comes out in your music and makes you different than anyone else in society.
So, you know, as frustrating as that may have been, could you argue that that was one of the forces that probably led Mick Mars to where he is today?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Mick Mars is where he is today just because he's different than anybody else you're going to meet.
Cool. So if you had to sort of sum up anything about Whitehorse, about your relation with Mick Mars, or just sort of, you know, your life, his life, what would you say? You know, here's like sort of a blank slate.
Well, if I had to sum up everything, he was sane and I was insane. He knew he could handle success and I knew I couldn't. I had to get out or I was dead, and he figured he could handle it and make it, and he did.
Interesting. All right, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Sure. I don't know if you want the van story. That's a good one.
Yeah, you know what? I've heard about this. Let him tell the van story. That is good.
We're heading back from Denver, Colorado in the freezing snow of the winter of '74. And our equipment truck, a 1959 Chevy, 2-ton equipment truck, breaks down in the snow in the middle of the night, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And that equipment truck has got no heat, and the windows are they have a 1-inch opening at the top of the windows, and the wind vents are all rusted open, and anybody driving that truck could only drive it at 15-minute shots or they'd freeze. Well, anyway, the truck blows up. All the guys in the band pile into my van, and we think we're going to freeze to death because we can't leave the equipment, we can't move the truck. What are we going to do? And we thought we just have to sleep it out. So everybody got in the van and tried to sleep it off, and Mick falls asleep on the floor of the van, and I've got this tile floor. The van was a customized show van, and it's got a ceramic tile floor, and Mick falls asleep on the tile floor. And we wake up the next morning, his face is frozen to the floor. I mean, he couldn't peel his lip off the floor. And David Day, the guitar player, says, well, we just have to get some warm liquid and pour it on him, and we can peel him off the floor. So Kenny says, well, somebody's got to pee on him. And David says, well, I can't pee. And then Harry says, oh, I got to go really bad. I can piss on Bob. And then Harry says, I have to go really bad. I can piss on Mick. And Mick says, you're not pissing on my face. And I go, yeah, you're not pissing in my van. But I'll never forget that Mick got his face frozen to the floor.
So how did he get out?
We found some margarine in my refrigerator, and we, put something on his face and peeled him off. But that was, I mean, he tells the story better than I did.
Boy, that was some tough times. The truck breaking down on the freeway, sleeping. 5 guys in the van, this van right here.
In the Barstow Desert.
And everybody's, butt fogging all over the place.
And I was getting ticked off because I'd driven all the way from Cheyenne, Wyoming with a burn mark on my butt. I went to moon these guys in a VFW hall across from the nightclub, and as I was backing out the window, I bumped into the fireplace flue with my butt. And it just it sizzled. So I ran downstairs and threw my rear end in the snow to cool it off. And we had to, all the way home, I was just driving on one cheek. And I was hurting and I was mad and I was ticked off. And we drove all the way to the Barstow Desert and our truck blows up. So all the guys from the truck pile into my van,
Yeah.
and we all spent the night in there. And I wanted to get a night's sleep, and everybody was fogging windows.
That's our new name, dude. Butt fog.
So I told him, I say, hey, the next guy that cracks wind, man's gonna spend the night outside.
And who was it? Harry.
But that was a once in a lifetime experience, and we barely lived through that night. It was like 0 degrees outside, and I couldn't turn the heat on in my van because we didn't know how far it was to the next town, if we were going to run out of gas. And we all huddled in that van and slept the night through, and I had a 3rd-degree burn on my butt, so I'm upset. That's another story how that happened. But we were all a little bent out of shape and had to try to get through that ordeal. And we lived through it.
It's a great story. Cool.
We
Thanks,
should
Jack.
roll some room tone.
Yeah,
Let's roll.
definitely.
30 seconds of that.
Okay, stand by for room tone.